Good afternoon, all you awesome people out there. My name is Scott Churchson, alongside Mr. JD Walker and Mr. Brandon Kay. And welcome to Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250, the Sportsnet. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android devices. When you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV, one last thing, is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. All right. So anyway, hope you guys are having yourselves a rocking Tuesday out there. We are going to be talking about a whole mess of cool stuff today. We're going to be talking a lot of time on right now on the Phoenix Suns, the future of Chris, the old Chris Paul, not the current new Chris Paul that's being played by Alfonso Ribeiro in commercials. But we're going to be breaking that down. We're going to be talking about some of the all-time biggest collapses of all time and where this one ranks amongst all of it. But gentlemen, how you doing? There you go.
We're doing well. Yeah, this was an interesting conclusion to that round of the playoffs. But hockey playoffs continue, NBA playoffs continue, MLB full swing. This is a great time for sports.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. This is right when the NBA playoffs are getting interesting, and the NHL kicking up in a high gear. I personally don't really acknowledge baseball until the All-Star break.
Fair enough. Much like Obi does not acknowledge NBA basketball until after Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
So talking about the NBA, specifically the playoffs, we had arguably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Game 7 collapse of all time, as the Phoenix Suns were destroyed at home for a pivotal Game 7 against the Dallas Mavericks and went out not with a bang, but with an absolute dud, including scoring only 27 points in the first half. 123-90 was the final. Dallas came in, Dallas destroyed, and Phoenix now is a little bit of flux. Gentlemen, give me your thoughts.
Chris Paul might be the biggest fraud in recent history, not named Ben Simmons. Aside from last year when the Suns made the finals, he's never made it past the second round in his career. He's been a part of five teams that have blown 2-0 leads in a 7-game series. I don't believe anybody else comes close to that. He does not belong on the top tier of all-time greats. Is he a Hall of Famer with his stats? Yeah, probably. But just coming up empty or injured in the playoffs every single year, aside from one, does not put you in the top tier of the all-time greats. And he's part of what I call the untradeable crew that keeps getting traded for each other, a group of about 5 players, including James Harden, Ben Simmons, and Russell Westbrook, that can only be traded for each other because they're both making absolutely insane contracts that they are not living up to.
Yeah, you can round out that group with John Wall to complete that.
John Wall, that was the other player I was thinking of.
Who honestly I forgot is still in the league. Like, it's really been that point with John Wall. But we digress from John Wall. He is not the point of topic here. With Chris Paul specifically, I have never seen someone, forgetting the fact that he is up in age, I've never seen someone have a birthday and immediately everything goes out the window. I mean, he turned 30, I think it's 37. It was Game 3. Yeah. It was that Friday night, and then you had Mother's Day Game 4. And just from that moment on, it was just an absolute... I've never seen such a difference between the beginning of a series to the end of a series for a single player alone, let alone the rest of the team. And I feel like once this Chris Paul stuff after Games 3 and 4 really started to creep, sink in and be like, this is how he's playing right now, then it just started to trickle down to the rest of the team. And by the time Game 7 happened, that's what we saw. And the fact that Luka Doncic put up a near 40-point, near triple-double, didn't even play the fourth quarter, is mind-boggling to me. And we could argue collapses versus just Game 7, screw-ups or whatever the case. But in terms of starting with a Game 7, you shouldn't even been in this position anyway. This series should have been gone, gone and over before 7 games. You'd gotten up to this point, and we could say, oh, a random Tuesday night in Detroit doesn't matter. But when you add up all these Tuesday night in Detroits and Thursday night in Sacramento's during the regular season, you're supposed to fight for home court advantage, in which the Suns had. They were by far and away had the best record in the West, by far and the best record in all of basketball, and to lose to a Luka Doncic is the best player out of that series, but to lose to the team in that fashion, I think is inexcusable, unforgivable. Any other negative, adjective we could throw out there for that, but it's kind of funny because JD, you've mentioned all of the collapses for all of these, basically every single team that Chris Paul has taken to the playoffs has had a 2-0 collapse or more. In such a sense, we go team them up with Doc Rivers and the Clippers and that 3-1 lead. And it's kind of, we kind of joking now, but like Chris Paul and Doc Rivers, like the situations, they're almost one and the same.
I mean, with the Clippers, they were one and the same.
Right. And they've just branched off, and they both continue to go that route with blowing these leads for whatever the case may be. And it's just, and Devin Booker. Once Devin Booker flopped on the deck like a fish and said, "Oh, that's the Luka special," series was over.
The other big one is, in fairness, this isn't all on Chris Paul. The even bigger disappearing act, which, because everybody's focusing on Paul, hasn't been talked about enough, is DeAndre Ayton completely disappearing.
That's another story.
And he's eligible for a Supermax extension, or could have gotten one last year. Of who gets the max versus Supermax versus Super Duper Max in the NBA is so confusing. But for who's eligible for what kind of salary cap destroying contract that they're eligible to get. But the Suns don't want to give it to Ayton. And after this disappearing act, I don't blame them. There's also rumblings of possible attitude or locker room issues, that I don't really know the extent of, but I've seen some rumblings about it. And Phoenix has some major issues that they need to address in this offseason. They almost as much as the Sixers do with their issues.
Go ahead,
well, my last point with this Phoenix team is, yes, they made it to the finals last year. Let's take that aside. Let's go this year alone. The minute they lost in Game 7, or were losing as bad as they were in Game 7, you knew they weren't coming back. And I literally thought to myself, they're slightly better than that Hawks team that won 60-some-odd games a handful of years ago, were the number 1 seed and got spanked in the middle of the playoffs by LeBron. Like, at the end of the day, you were barely that team. You were essentially that Hawks team of the West this year. And Luka Doncic, let's give him credit too. Luka Doncic is something else.
Luka is the future of the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can discuss the Western Conference finals entirely. Even if Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie go back and forth, giving you serviceable games to help out Luka, I would not be surprised if Luka is holding the Larry O'Brien Trophy at the end of this year. That's not my pick, but it is a possibility that I see and wouldn't be totally surprised if it happened.
Well, honestly, any one of these 4 teams that are left, you could make a case for any one of those teams, and they're very evenly matched.
Well, in this case, basically, since we're on the topic of Dallas and everything, how far do you think they can go? Do you think they can reach the finals now?
I have them going past Golden State.
You do? Okay.
I personally think that the Warriors' experience gives them an advantage here, although Luka is the hottest player in the league right now for the past few weeks, and the hottest one right now. Steph Curry is still Steph Curry. the Warriors are still the Warriors. And while they had a bit of an up and down regular season, they still, and they've been down the past 2 seasons. Now with everybody back and healthy, you can tell that the machinery is warmed up and is picking up steam. So this should be a fantastic series between the Warriors and the Mavericks. But I think that the Warriors, with their experience, that they'll take it. The Mavs just don't have that it factor yet, but I could just as easily see Luka going on a tear and continuing this. But ultimately, I do think the Warriors win.
I'm going to go Mavs in 7. That's my official pick.
I'll go Warriors in 6.
I'm not going to put you guys through anything right now. I'm not going to make you basically make a full bet out of it. Bragging rights only has that.
Yep.
That's fair.
So, cool. All right. On the East side, give me some thoughts there.
You want to go?
You're the Miami guy. You start, Brandon.
I'm very excited about this series. I feel like this Eastern Finals matchup is going to be a little more old school in terms of the style of basketball. Yes, both teams are going to shoot the three, but you're going to get a physicality in this series that I don't think you're going to see so much in the Western series. Boston and Miami, going back to their playoff rivalry between these two teams, if there's any inclination of those series, that's what we're going to see this year. The second I knew that was going to be the matchup, my first image that I thought in my head was a couple years ago when they played in the conference final in the bubble, and Bam blocked Jason Tatum. That big backboard block, I think it was game 1 or 2 early in that series, that really kind of set momentum for the Heat and really gave them confidence going into that series and then onto the finals before losing to the Lakers in 6. I can see it happening again, but I am more willing to say that the Celtics would win in 6 rather than the Heat winning in less than 7, if that makes sense. But I think this is going to be a tremendous matchup. Both teams play defense out of this world. Both teams can shoot well. I think if the Heat are consistent with the three, I think they might be able to outlast. They have home court, but Boston obviously is able to steal on the road like nobody's business that we've seen in this playoffs. So I think the Heat are going to win in 7, but if the Celtics were to win, it would be in either 6. But I'm going to go with the Heat.
You have to have loyalty.
I got it. Yeah. I got to.
I'm thinking this is a very evenly matched series, much more evenly matched than the conference finals 2 years ago that you just mentioned, where Miami just straight up outplayed them. I think it'll be much more even this time. So I think Miami wins this in 7.
All right. So basically, both of you guys are picking Miami in this particular case. Sorry to Boston Nation on something like that.
This Kyle Lowry injury, though, is really I didn't think it would last this long, and being that they've ended up they beat Atlanta in 5, Philly in 6. They had some time in between these series for him to get healthy, but this seems to be like a lingering injury that may be worse than they're leading on, or worse than it just seems to be. But I think if you were to get Kyle Lowry back, that would really propel you. But to have a Victor Oladipo on the bench, Tyler Hero needs to step up. Duncan Robinson's got to make threes and take threes. But I think this is going to be a very well-balanced matchup. Game 1 tonight, very exciting.
Yeah, Max Strus, another Big East guy out of DePaul, has been playing key minutes off the bench too, which if that doesn't show you just how deep the Big East Conference is in college basketball, DePaul was garbage year in and year out. Yet you still have Max Strus coming out of there playing important minutes down the stretch in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, starting and undrafted. So to the makeup, the production with the lack of, with the loss of Kyle Lowry, it's there. It's just, can it sustain the playoffs when you're going up against like a Boston that is defensive, a worldly defensive team, And then, whatever you were to face in the finals. But hopefully you get Lowry back. But this is going to be a great series.
Nice. So, game 1 tonight. Are you ready for it?
I am so ready. I'm nothing. I have scratched. I might even turn my phone off. That's how laser focused I am on this.
Nice.
Nothing can deter me from this game.
Nice. So here, flipping back to the West for a second, I want to just basically, we're going to go into all-time collapses in a second, but I wanted to get a feel for, in general, where you guys both place the Suns fail. I don't personally think it is the biggest Game 7 collapse of all time. It is definitely not the biggest series collapse in my mind, but I wanted to find out where you guys placed it in general. If you got something, basically a simple yes or no, is it the biggest of all time, before we start getting into our all-time biggest ones?
I will say, as far as a single game dud of a performance, it is very shocking, but not the worst.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few. I mean, there's a few I think of just among my own teams that are worse.
Same. Brandon, where do you place it?
Especially for a Game 7, considering you have home court with that, it's for me. It's hard to not put that single game way up there. Individual series collapse, I would not say it is like such an all-time, like it is, but it is not far up on the list.
It was only a 2-0 lead. It wasn't like 3-1 or 3-0 either.
Yeah, it was it was still a little bit back and forth. It's just the way it ended makes it seem so much worse than it really was. But to be down 50 in a Game 7 at home, to a point where their best player isn't even playing the fourth quarter, I mean, that's really. I'm at a loss for words.
It's one thing to lose. It's another thing for a team to. It looked like the Suns just straight up quit by halftime of that.
I mean, second quarter they only scored 10 points.
Before that,
27 for the half. I mean, what do you say? I mean, there's nothing more you really need to say than just that.
I think Luka Doncic had. I think Luka had more points than the entire Phoenix starting lineup by halftime.
He had 35 points for the night.
Yeah, he had the same amount as the team by halftime.
Yeah,
and played well. Really, it took him out in the third quarter, so it was more than the fourth quarter that he sat.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at
the amount of sun puns I had. Don't let the sun go down on me. Black hole sun. I mean, I could just go on and on.
I'm like, oh damn!
God.
Yeah, for the YouTube channel, I was trying to come up. I was working on this last night around midnight, and I'm like trying to come up with some clever ideas. I'm like, suns go supernova. Sun freeze. I
can send you a playlist, and we can put together like this blooper reel.
Yeah. I was sitting there. I'm sitting there racking my brain, just going through everything to try and find.
Here comes the sun. We can go on and on.
But something about the fact that they just just completely in this case went supernova. But I didn't think people would necessarily understand that reference. So, but all right. So we're 20 minutes in at this point. We got about 35 minutes left. This does not, and I think we're all in agreement, is a massive egg that was dropped, but not the worst of all time because of the fact the series itself was only 2-0. It wasn't 3-0. I wanted to get your thoughts.
We want to expand it to season collapses. Our 07 Mets right up there.
Yeah. Well, for my individual series collapses, I have 3 in order of how bad they were, just from a single game standpoint. First, I put the Knicks in the 94 NBA Finals.
Mm-hmm.
The John Starks, I think 3 for 18 game where much like Eitan and Paul last night, where he just didn't have it, but Riley left him in there. The reason that's not higher on the list is because that game was at least in Houston and wasn't at home. Next up, I got to go 2006 NLCS and the Mets losing at home in Shea Stadium after they were riding high after the Endy Chavez catch saving the home run, which was one of the best defensive plays that I've seen in my lifetime. and it didn't mean jack. When they blew the lead later in the game, and you have Beltran, Wainwright striking out, Beltran looking, and that bat staying on Beltran's shoulders. I still have not forgiven Carlos Beltran for that, and that, along with his role in Trash Can Gate in Houston, keeps him out of the Hall of Fame.
And now that he's part of the Yankees payroll,
is he part of the Yankees payroll? What do they have? Some?
Yeah, he's broadcaster now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought they came up with some BS special
great.
advisor role
Great.
or something.
Another Yankees broadcaster littered all over TV.
Well, to be fair, it's only
the number one single game 7 collapse for my teams is the 2009 New Jersey Devils first round against Carolina. They were up by 2 goals. I don't remember if it was 1 goal or 2, with less than 3 minutes left in Game 7 at home.
Yep.
And they gave up 2 goals in the last 2.5 minutes, and went from about to win the series in less than 3 minutes away from winning to tied to losing the game in the series in less than 3 minutes.
And that was during that era where they always struggled to get past the first and second round. They would get to the playoffs. Their regular season would start when playoff time started. And they struggled royally to get past there. And I remember that was the series that I thought, okay, they're finally going to get past there. They're finally going to move on. I went to pee, came back, and suddenly they lost. It was just that fast.
It happened that quickly.
It's not on my list. The Devils are on my list, but not in that one now. Brandon, do you want to go next? Or do you want me to roll with it?
No, I just have one because I think one really just sticks with me. It's not even the Mets. Obviously, it's not the Rangers. For me, it is the 2011 Finals with LeBron, the Heat, Mavericks. It was a 2-1 lead, but just the fashion in which Rome collapsed was brutal. I'm barely able to escape it to this day, but it's a stain. It's not
that much of a stain. Miami went out and won the next 2 seasons.
It hurts.
That's what you got to look at.
Please, the amount of people that still get on LeBron for that series is absurd. As if you said he didn't make up for it for the next decade afterwards.
I mean, there are people that will look to dump on LeBron every chance they get, and at times it is deserved. I mean, there's many points in his career where it was. That one, I think, is a bit too much. But that was the moment that showed that the super team Heat were not ready for prime time just yet. But they tweaked it and got it together the next season and won. And then they won again in 2013 before losing to the Spurs in year 4, closing out that run before LeBron went back to Cleveland. So it's not like that was their only shot and they blew it.
Now, my question to you before we get into my own, and I'm going to start with JD on this one first, because I'm going to bring up a sore spot for Brandon here. Where do you put the Atlanta Falcons' second half collapse in the Super Bowl?
Ooh.
We're talking games. We're talking Game 7. We're focusing, granted, on Game 7, but that one in some ways, for some reason in my mind, seems to get a little bit more of a free pass. I don't know why, but you were up 28-3. You blew the lead. You lost in overtime, but for some reason, it's more of a footnote as far as collapses go versus a lot of the other teams that we mentioned and we're going to mention.
Partly because I think part of that is because it's sort of lost in the white noise of he who shall not be named winning 7 Super Bowls.
Voldemort. Just call him Voldemort. It's fine.
Yeah. Voldemort's 7 victories. That was just one of them. And and I disagree. I think that is a permanent stain on the city of Atlanta and the Falcons franchise, and will be a running joke for years to come. And as far as city,
yes, but as the sport goes, it's in some ways the whole.
No, I wouldn't even say the city. The team. The team hasn't been the same since that game.
Right. But
they still have the Braves.
there have been a
who are
lot of
suspended.
Atlanta sports collapses, although the edge has been taken off of that a little bit with with the Braves winning the World Series last
Mhm.
year. But there's been plenty of Atlanta sports collapses, on the regular. You can even throw UGA in there too with the Tua game against
Mhm.
Alabama. So, but as far as all-time NFL or all-time sports collapses, single game collapses, I would put that in the top three for sure.
Fair.
Can I not argue that the Timberwolves against the Grizzlies in the first round, when they lost two different 25-point leads in a single game, on top of all the other leads they lost in that series, I felt like I was watching that Super Bowl for 4 to 5 games.
The
4 or
only
5
difference is
games. I was
that's a
watching
game one though.
what
That's a game one.
of
So I
the.
think some of the meltdown
No,
there
I
gets
know.
lost.
Yeah, just in terms, and then losing because they would have ended
You're
up
talking from
being
like an
able
actual
to win
individual game, not the series as a whole, though.
individual game, but they
Mm.
they lost multiple leads of nearly 20 points in that series. The
Mhm.
Timberwolves, they easily could have beaten the Grizzlies if they weren't stupid.
Which year was that?
This
I don't
past
remember
year,
that one.
this past year, the Grizzlies Timberwolves
Yeah.
when they went back and forth with all these. And Pat Beverly, oh my God, I can't stand him. I
Pat
can't.
Beverly is one of those type of stuff stirrers that like you love him if he's on your team, but you hate him if he's on
Mhm.
if he's on the opposing team. Kind of like Wayne Simmons in the NHL in recent years is another
Oh
one of
yeah,
those type of players
former
that comes
Devil
to
himself.
mind.
So I got to go in this case here. I want to start off with an honorable mention. JD, you mentioned the 2009 Devils. I'm going to go back 9 years in time to the Devils Flyers series. Flyers were up 3-1, lost the series, but also lost Eric Lindros in Game 7. They lost their poster child.
Yes.
Their Philadelphia hero in Eric Lindros went down with a concussion, which at the time was a 100% legal hit and a mistake by Lindros. Now probably would be penalized, suspended, but you have to go by the era that it was in.
Yeah,
But
and Lindros being stupid enough to skate with his head down.
Don't skate with your
near
head down.
Scott Stevens.
First rule of thumb, and especially like I said, in this case here, it was a clean 100% hit
Yeah.
in that era. So a lot of fans are like, it's not legal. It was back then, but Philadelphia was not the same. Lindros was not the same, and they lost to a division rival who went on to win the Stanley Cup in 6 games in double overtime. So I'm putting that in as an honorable mention.
Mhm.
Maybe possibly it could be a little bit higher because Philadelphia did struggle for a while, and they had the 3-1 lead, and the Devils just came back. And like I said, that was the capture of the whole thing, was the Lindros hit. So throwing that one in there, basically.
Lindros,
I remember
that was also Lindros's, I think, 3rd or 4th concussion that season.
he had a few. Yeah, that was part of why a lot of teams, I think the Maple Leafs were afraid to take him on. He eventually went to the Rangers, but they were afraid because every single concussion makes it easier for the next concussion. Troy Aikman will talk about that. I think Tony Romo talks about that too.
Right.
Where, every single time you have one, the next one becomes easier until you have 5, 6, or 7. And then all it takes is just simply, bam, you got another one. That simple.
Yeah. I've seen a few players in multiple sports on all different levels, from high school up to the pros that have had issues with that. It is scary. And, but because of that series is why I joke that, when I moved to to just outside Philly, that my Scott Stevens jersey is the most dangerous piece of clothing right now.
Yeah, really, it is.
That will probably get me killed in Wells Fargo Center.
Philly is a
Flyer
different
fans
nation. Like
still are bitter about that one to this day, and I don't really blame them.
It is 22 years, but yeah, that was, like I said, that's why I had to preface this by saying it was a legal hit in its time. Now, obviously not. I did want to actually throw another one out there in this case here. I think one of the things that we need to talk about, and you guys are going to love this one, is the 1986 World Series. series as a whole, but also the Game 7 collapse on top of it. I mean, obviously everybody knows Game 6. Buckner, Bob Stanley. We know all about that. But the Red Sox had to win Game 7. There was still a Game 7, and they were up 3-0 in the sixth inning there as well before losing 8-5. So that game gets lost a lot. But for a city that had been craving and clamoring and was one pitch away so many times from erasing a stigma that had lasted 68 years at that point, repeatedly, they lost 2 games back-to-back in heartbreak fashion. And nobody ever talks about Game 7 because it's overshadowed by Game 6. And they had like I said, they had a 3-0 lead. So where do you put that one?
I mean, I believe it was Clemens that was the Boston pitcher that really stunk it up in that game. I don't remember. Something else.
Yeah.
While it was slightly, that was before my time as a fan. Something I realized while watching the Mets 30 for 30 documentary last year, Once Upon a Time in Queens, was how I had never seen much of the footage from the Boston games in that series. All you see is Game 6 being run over and over again. Yeah. But the games 1, 2 games, the middle games in Boston, you rarely saw them. I almost never saw that footage. I think that was the first time I'd actually seen tape of the Lenny Dykstra home run in Game 3.
Yes. On that short porch that they got right there. Yeah, I remember that because I was old enough to remember it. And most of the time they don't really discuss games 1 and 2 because they want to talk about the comeback. They want to talk about the excitement there, and that was the first time I think in a World Series, a team had come back from 2-0 to win a series. 7 games, but they won it anyway. But much is not really mentioned about the fact that, the team lost 1, 2, and 5. They only focus on 3, 4, 6, and 7.
Right.
Throwing another one out there that for some reason I think gets overshadowed a little bit. Let's send the Wayback Machine to the 2003 NLCS. Steve Bartman, wherever you may be, supposedly rumor has it you were somewhere in Florida, but you are more off the grid than J.D. Salinger ever was. So, my slight bit of culture for the day. In this case, the team actually had the lead. Moises Alou blamed Bartman, and he became the poster child for everything that was wrong in Chi-Town. They lost Game 6. They gave up 6 runs. They lost Game 7, and they were that close to getting back to the World Series for the first time since, I believe, 1945. And when it comes to collapses and comes to things like this, he was brutally massacred. I mean, like I said, they had to send security and cops to his house to protect him.
Right, and he got all the blame despite the fact that Anthony Gonzalez kept kicking grounders all over the field. And
they gave up 6 runs after that. Who do you blame for that?
Yeah.
No, I want to be on record saying that situation is one of the biggest cop-out in sports history. We're really sitting here after all these years and putting the weight of this sports franchise's failure on a fan.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really ridiculous.
Let me ask you this. Go ahead, but
no, I mean, really, like let's bring it out. Microscope. Let's zoom out through all the years of Cubs. That's really failures. That's really how we are idolizing it. How we're crystallizing it in history. By that moment with Barton, it's such a cop-out.
So let me ask you this. Actually, this brought up an interesting question I've got, and I know, JD, you've got a hockey one in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Which one was the bigger undeserved cop-out, Bartman or Buckner?
Bartman.
You think so?
Yeah.
Why?
Buckner was at least on the field. He was at least playing. And both of those ultimately were not really the fault of the people who were blamed for it. I blame Anthony Gonzalez, who I had, I think, 2 or 3 errors in 1 inning. For in Game 7 for the Cubs. Then as for Buckner, that Game 6 in that series was lost by John McNamara, the Red Sox manager,
Mm-hmm.
and how he absolutely screwed the pooch with that bullpen management in Game 6. And Buckner, because he was old with bad knees, was almost always taken out for defensive replacement late in games. But they left Buckner out there so he could be on the field for a World Series celebration,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
which was terribly short-sighted and cost the Red Sox the series. Bartman was just a poor schmuck who was scapegoat for the fact that the team just absolutely collapsed.
Mm. Because had they won that game, are we talking about him? And they won that series and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
No.
In either case,
we're
though,
not.
if the Red Sox won Game 7 or the Cubs won Game 7 or even Game 6,
Yeah.
this would be a burp of a footnote at best.
Right.
It was a weak cop out. That had they not won the World Series a few years ago, people would still be all up in arms about this for no reason.
Boston never forgave Buckner until the Sox won in 2004.
They did give him a break a few years later. They did give him a hero's walk, but they pretty much drove his family out of town.
Yeah, but Chicago with Bartman, what they did to that guy was absolutely disgusting.
Buckner was used to Boston. He's used to the attention. He's used to that. Bartman was just a kid with headphones.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it too. That headphone look. I think
it was a look. It was a look too.
Yeah.
It was a look that would now be considered. It was a very memeable look in today's culture.
Yeah. But now I think Chicago has. I think the Cubs fans felt guilty after it happened and realized that they took it too far because they tried to make amends.
I think
it's like basically if you ever get bullied and the bully realizes they go too far and they're suddenly extra nice to you, even though you know that how much of a douchebag they were when they did everything to you.
I think the Cubs have attempted to track him down to try and make amends, and Bartman has not responded. I can't say
that's why I led with in theory Florida.
Yeah.
I think then Governor Jeb Bush was like, "Yeah, we'll take you. It's okay." JD, you had something with hockey though.
So, as we're talking about Game 7 collapses and playoff collapses, there's one hockey team that is snake bit in particular for decades: the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Mm-hmm.
Not only have they lost in the first round for the past 5 consecutive seasons, they've gone 0-9 in elimination games over the past over that time period and years before it. They have not won a playoff series since 2004, before the NHL lockout. They have not won a Stanley Cup since 1967, the last year of the original 6, 55 years and counting. But throughout all of that, and the fact that the Maple Leafs are essentially the NHL's equivalent of the Knicks, a team with more money than sense, awful ownership, crazy, delusional fans, claim a championship history from over 50 years ago, when they haven't won jack since then. But in all of that, you have the 2013 first round, Game 7 against Boston. They had a 4-1 lead with 5 minutes left in the game, and blew, and lost to the Bruins. Continuing the streak of futility that extends to this day, and includes another blown 3-2 lead in the series against Tampa last week, which apparently has some when I don't want to hear this stuff about how nice Canadian sports fans are.
I remember Vancouver a few years ago when they lost the
between riots in Vancouver, Toronto, multiple times when they've lost in the Stanley Cup final, crazy behavior of Leafs fans going back decades. Montreal fans are even worse, and Raptors fans who cheered when Joel Embiid got hurt in the first round of the NBA playoffs this year. And I also remember in 2007 when the Nets played the Raptors in the first round of the playoffs. The Raptors fans that drove down to New Jersey from Toronto, oh, they were so annoying. So I don't want to. I'm tired of hearing this garbage about how nice Canadian sports fans are. No, they're not. They're just as terrible. Well,
As our
mileage may
producer
vary
of the
based on
show is
state
actually from
and
Canada, those
league.
freaking Toronto people, man. Those
Right.
people from Canada, those Toronto people, including the people that produce the show we have, you know. I'm
Yeah,
just
but
curious if he's listening right now, as they're trying to egg him on a little bit just for the fun of it. All right.
Yeah,
We got-
but LOL Leafs is hockey gold.
Mhm. We got 15 minutes left, and we got one that we're going to be talking about that we haven't yet. And I think you guys are more happy than disappointed with it. We are setting the way back. We've talked about 2003. Now we're going to 2004. I don't think I have to go much further beyond having to explain this. But there was a certain team from the Bronx that had won Game 3 in decidedly strong fashion in Fenway by a 19-8 final.
Which team was this?
The Yankees. Yeah.
The who?
There's a team. The other team in New York that's not the Mets. Yeah, there's.
The Yankees.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
They call
Okay.
it stadium the house that Baby Ruth built. You know,
Right.
the candy bar guy. Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but yeah,
confused.
2004. I remember watching that game because Gary Sheffield smashed the snot out of a double that bounced off the green monster, basically on a literal line drive to make it like 9. It was like 19-8, and you just felt the sadness in Boston Nation. And the Yankees at that time were the bullies of the Red Sox. They were. And listen, I'm going to straight. The Red Sox far and away have had a much, much, much better 21st century than the Yankees had. But when I was working at a job, one of the interns at the job was from the Boston area, somewhere around Foxborough. He put, after Game 3, he put $50 on the Boston Red Sox to win the ALCS in 2004. He won over $1,500 in 2004 money because the Yankees lost Game 4, Game 5, Game 6, and got killed at home in Game 7.
Wait, say it again. Say that again.
They lost. Yeah, they won games 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
and then they lost in Game 4 in Fenway.
Okay.
They lost in Game 5 in Fenway. They lost in Game 6 at Yankee Stadium. That was basically well known as the A-Rod slap game. Just breathe the clean air, my friend. The A-Rod slap game where he slapped the ball out of, what was it, Arroyo's mitt, I think at that point, whatever it was. And then, of course, Game 7, where I believe Johnny Damon crushed the Yankee Spirits before joining the team, ironically, with a grand slam en route to a 10-3 whopping and a meltdown at Yankee Stadium. So when it comes to what Phoenix Suns fans experienced, against the Mavericks, that cannot hold a candle to what the Yankees did, especially given the fact that the Red Sox would go on to win and sweep the World Series that year, winning, I believe, 8 straight, first team in history, I think, to come back from the 0-3 and then also win that way, sweep the next series, completely changing the ending, I believe, of the movie Fever Pitch with Jimmy Fallon and Drew Barrymore?
Drew Barrymore, yes.
Yep. Which, as the Red Sox were celebrating at Yankee Stadium, inexplicably, it's like, what the hell is Jimmy Fallon doing there?
Yeah, they had to change that movie.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
To prep for the original ending of that movie, Jimmy Fallon had to watch everything with the 1986 World Series, every single play all the way through, to get what it felt like to be a Beantown fan. And then, of course, they were prepped. They were down 3-0. Okay, the ending's going to go as it is. And then the Red Sox started winning, and then Ortiz basically sent it back to the Bronx. Before Game 7, the Red Sox watched the movie Miracle about the 1980. But not the Miracle one that came out. There was a previous one that had happened in prior to 2004. But they had watched that about the 1980 Olympic hockey team, and it was the end of an era and a signaling of a change. Because at that point, the Red Sox started winning World Series. The Yankees would get back in 2009 and never get back since. And that was the closest that Joe Torre ever got to a World Series again. So, Brandon, do you have a couple of things you want to say about this?
No, that just brings up good times.
I'm just
Yeah.
It's kind of warm today, so I could use a few Yankee fan tears to cool off.
You're like,
Yeah, I'm just
it's nice. I
come
like
on,
it, sweet. Yeah,
bask in it.
it's like your tears have a little bit of a bitter feel to them.
Mhm.
They're a little bitter, but you know what? I got to tell you, I
Yes.
really kind of like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
keep complaining about when we haven't won a World Series since 2009. Boo hoo.
I
No, I
stand by
mean,
my belief that that team's going to fall in August. But go ahead.
no, but then after that, I mean, the Sox pulling off some memorable World Series,
Mhm.
after the marathon and the situation that happened in 2013 to go on that run. And I remember that vaguely. And
Mhm.
that was very, you put your team fandom aside and you kind of just relish in that situation. And it was a wholesome situation for the Red Sox to win after that. And then we know what happened in World Series after that, and kind of where they are now. But you both felt the need to engage in extracurriculars. The two of you, shame on
Yeah.
you.
And it's funny because, like I said, I remember watching Game 3 and seeing Sheffield and A-Rod and everything like that, and just the unbridled beatdown that was Game 3 there, and you felt this Yankee
Maybe if you
ego.
cheated back then, you could have held on to that series.
Listen. If you cheat and lose, you're a cheater. If you cheat and win, you're considered savvy. South Park rules on Bill Belichick. But there was something about that team where obviously the Red Sox missed the World Series. They had 86, and then they played the Yankees in 99, lost that series handily. The Yankees were in the middle of that huge colossal run. They had lost the year prior, and frankly, what would be defined as an upset, because, to the Marlins. But to get there, they
Yeah.
tore the heart out of Boston Nation with Aaron Boone.
I
You
remember
know,
that. I remember that game well. It was not only the Aaron Boone game, but I remember watching that and screaming at Grady Little.
for Baker, he lost a job because of that too.
Yeah, he got fired because of that, and Francona came in and righted the ship the next year. But I remember, watching in the common room in my dorm in college, and a few of us were just yelling like, "What is wrong with Little leaving? He left Pedro in there too long, where he was clearly shot." And just was not taking him out, and it was just disaster waiting to happen, and then it did.
And yet, ironically, if it worked out, he would have been a genius for staying with a tired Pedro, because then
Mhm.
you would have an incident where you had somebody who pitched 130, 140 pitches. The grit, the determination of Pedro to get the team to the World Series for the first time in almost 2 decades. He would look as a unbridled hero for leaving him in there. So you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And that Pedro was that sword. I don't personally blame that decision. When you got Pedro, if Pedro says he's fine, you trust Pedro. And listen, he gave the Mets a couple of good years there too. 05, 06,
Yeah.
maybe even part of 07, I think. And that's where I think it's one of those things that you go with, you trust what he says. And I don't have a problem with it. As a Yankee fan, I don't blame Grady Little at all for that. I think it's just one of those things. It worked out the way it worked out. Posada's little bloop to center, which nobody covering second. All of these little things just added up at that point.
Yeah.
A misplay in right field that started the whole thing for giving Derek Jeter a double.
Yeah.
All of this was not Pedro. It was just circumstance.
Well, the same way in 2004 in Game 4, the moment forgotten about that started that comeback was Dave Roberts having a bloop hit off of Rivera and then stealing a base so he could score the tying run from second. That was quite possibly the most key stolen base in baseball history since 2000.
But you forget about it because Ortiz had the walk off, and obviously the comeback at the Bronx and everything that happened there. That little baseball is what made the big difference. And I remember watching that walk off there, and I thought, I don't like the way this feels. There was just something in it. Of all places, I was in a Best Buy and I saw it, and it just felt like the winds, you can feel something in the wind. And yeah, and I remember basically I was working second shift and I had the TV on in the back and I was watching this, and you just saw the decline. And then I saw this kid, Pat Bros, from Foxborough in that area. And as my misery was increasing, his smile was getting bigger. And like I said, if you're a broke college kid and you get $1,550, I mean, my God, you get that. What's that?
You're on cloud nine. I mean, nothing can tear you down after that.
Dude, no. So respect to him. I'm still
so
thankful
much
for
damage with that, especially in 2004 money.
And it's funny because he was not brutal to me on that. He did troll a little bit, as rightfully so. But oh my God, the sick feeling that I had in my stomach when I watched that Johnny Damon home run, at work. I mean, not at work. I was employed. I got canned from that job 2 years later.
I mean, it was a Best Buy, so there's TV.
I saw Game 4 at Best Buy. I watched Game 6 and 7 at my job.
Oh, I thought you worked at Best Buy.
No. I was working IT at Stevens Institute at the time, and So no, I watched the game in the back room. As opposed to being out front where I was supposed to be. The year prior I did it when the Devils won, so I got an ego boost and I thought I could get away with it. No, but suffice it to say, I ended up like a year and a half, almost 2 years later, losing that job to one of my employees, and it may have just started there. I don't know, but anyway. We got about 3-4 minutes left. Do you guys have any final thoughts?
Well, we have the NHL playoffs, second round starting. We have in the West, we have St. Louis against Colorado, who won the President's Trophy, and Edmonton, Calgary. In the East, we have the Rangers, who came back from their own 3-1 deficit in the first round to beat Pittsburgh in overtime in Game 7. And they're playing Carolina. And then you have Tampa against the Florida Panthers, coming off of their first playoff series win since 1996.
Yeah. And as a tired Devils fan, I used to hate the Rangers every
We have the number 2 draft pick.
Dude, that team has had the number 4 draft pick or higher 4 out of the last 6 seasons. I really wish I could say some dirty words right now, but I'll get in trouble for it. So I'm just going to say poop, darn, crap baskets, fornication, whatever you want to say here. But kudos to the Rangers on that one, because you know what? That may go down in history as one of the best playoff series of all time as well. I think history may see it that way, depending on how far the Rangers go.
Yes, that was very
kudos
exciting.
To Brandon, by the way, for being a Rangers fan too.
Yes, very exciting stuff. I know I'm in a weird kind of state where all my teams that are active right now are playing well. This is very rare. I mean, I've gotten a few days over the last couple of weeks where I've gotten where the Mets get the doubleheader and the Heat win the same. I'm getting 3 wins in a single day.
Everything piles down.
Yeah, this is good time right now. I'm cautiously though.
Yeah, and then
it in. I don't know when it'll end.
It makes the inevitable collapse, hurt that much more. That's what usually happens as a Mets fan.
As we finalize my 2004 story. All right, we got to wrap this up at this point, but thanks as always to Mr. Brandon Kay and, of course, Mr. J.D. Walker. 7 o'clock tonight, we have Tales from the Film Set. We're hitting 3 different topics. One, the new additions to the Doctor Who 60th anniversary special, which is an old edition. In this case, I'm very excited about. Some of the recent cancellations that are going on with Warner Brothers, including possibly Amber Heard being out of Aquaman 2. And, of course, how to do a remote audition via Zoom and not look like an idiot. So, anyway, I'm Scott. That's Brandon Kay. That's JD Walker. Thanks as always. Appreciate you guys. Take care. Stay awesome.